morning, glory, and evening grace, America. Hugh Hewitt in back after a week back east with grandchildren. Of course, I brought back from that wonderful visit the dengue fever or whatever it is they all had. So I've got laryngitis. I feel fine, but I got laryngitis. Had it for 3 days. But I came in anyway because I got to tell you that Republicans need to vote for the continuing resolution. And that dummy from Kentucky, Tom Massey, already said no. He's not going to do it. Chris LaCivita, the president's political aide, consigliere, said, "Tick-tock, Tommy, please, Chris, please, run someone against that moron." He is a moron. And every Republican needs to vote for the CR. Speaker Johnson unveiled it over the weekend. It's got to be passed by Friday. Republicans have lost the one vote they can lose from Tom Massey. And no Democrat's going to vote for it. And it will probably fail in the Senate, but then at least the shutdown of the government will be appropriately blamed on the Democrats. Now, the CR is a 6-month deal. It cuts spending in some places, adds spending to defense and border, which is good. We got to have it. There's no way around it. We've got to keep the government open and keep the deportations going. Keep everything going, in fact. Keep every effort to cut off federal funds to universities that are encouraging anti-Semitism like Columbia, which found out, fool around and find out, F-O-F-A, F-O-F-O, F-A-F-O, fool around and find out, F-A-F-O. I got to clean it up, right? This is FCC regulated. Fool around and find out, Columbia. They're out $400 million. Good. Fool around and find out, Columbia student aiding Hamas. That green card is no good if you're helping Hamas. Goodbye. And I heard my friends at commentary worrying that maybe it's too much of a blunderbuss. No. It's all about the messaging, same as with the border, same as with tariffs on Mexico and Canada, which is about the fentanyl and about illegal migration. The fact that border crossings have dropped to zero shows that when you over-communicate, you actually communicate. And the message is out. Now the message is going out to every university in the country. We will cut off your money. We being the federal government. Title VI, 1964 Civil Rights Act, bars discrimination on the basis of race or ethnicity. Take your choice when it comes to Jews. It's both a race and an ethnicity. Check out your 23andMe spit. See if you come back with some kind of Jew. It's an ethnicity. It's a race. And the universities have been tolerating anti-Semitism. You're going to lose your money. And the kids who are involved in supporting Hamas are going to lose your green cards. And the kids who are just here that we don't like, we're going to take your student visas. And you're going to be gone. Because we're going to restore order to the universities. And by the way, universities, maybe you should lose money if you have institutionalized racism by department. That's something that the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education I'll look at as well. But the main thing, okay, some of you will not know who your congressperson is. I don't blame you. You might live in a blue district, and you're listening to me and you're a Republican. I wouldn't know him either, or her. All you have to do is go to house.gov or just Google, who's my representative, put in your zip code. If you're a Steelers fan, you don't know your zip code, tell them, I'm a Steelers fan, help me. If you can't spell that, ask a neighbor. Someone in Pittsburgh will know who your representative is. Say, I'd like to keep the government open. I think Trump's doing a good job. We added 20 million people. I looked this up over the weekend. 20 million people in 40 years from 1880 to 1920. 20 million people in 40 years is what I meant to say. 20 million people in 40 years. We added 20 million people in 4 years. And we're sending a bunch of people back. Over message on that. That's great. Got to keep doing that. We also have to get serious about the Chi-Coms. They did a run around Australia. They did the whole, well, look who we are. We're the People's Liberation Army Navy. I'm going to ask Admiral Mark Montgomery about that later today. We got to get the shipbuilding going. Trump gets it. Now, the good news about not having much of a voice today is that Trump had a lot of voice today. He was on Air Force One. But before I go to that, let me tell you, I want to thank Dwayne, who sat in for me last week. I want to thank Kurt Schlechter, Ed Morrissey, Mark Davis. Great guys. You couldn't raise a dime for Food for the Poor. I just wanted to point that out. We're trying to help out El Salvador here. And we're trying to help out El Salvador with Food for the Poor because El Salvador is trying to help us out. They are taking back all their bad guys. They're taking back bad guys that other countries won't take back. They're putting them in with the gang members. El Salvador has really cracked down. They've had it. So we're trying to do Food for the Poor in a big way. So I would like you to bigly step up today. All you have to do is text Hewitt to 51555 or go to hughhewitt.com. Find the banner at the top. That's easier. hughhewitt.com. Find the banner at the top. 100, 1,000, $5,000. Help feed kids in El Salvador. They're cleaning that country up. We got an ally again in Central America. Let's help them. $300 feeds a child for an entire year. One school lunch for an entire year. And Food for the Poor knows who they're working with. Or you can call them, 855-359-4673. I wanted to lead off with that because my friends did a great job, but they didn't say enough on Food for the Poor. I spent the weekend working. Yeah, the grandkids. My back doesn't hurt because I took my relief factor, which I'll take in a moment. But I spent the week talking to Ari about Chapter. Dial pound 250 and say Chapter Medicare. That's if you're 65 years or older. Now, I'm on Medicare. I think it's a nightmare. I think it's ridiculous. I'm a lawyer. I spent hours when I enrolled. I've had to re-enroll twice because the plans were wrong. I used, quote, consultants. I wish I'd known about Chapter Medicare 2.5 years ago when I enrolled. And I got to tell you, it's big data. AI has come to Medicare. It's now easy. Instead of using consultant A through Z that someone, I got a really good consultant. Nah. I got the whole scoop. I got Ari coming on tomorrow. I don't know him that. I just want him to talk to you about it. But if you're going to enroll, 11,000 Americans turn 65 every day. 11,000 mistakes are being made every day with Medicare. 11,000 people have no idea what they're doing because it's a government program and it's run like a government program. And it took a bunch of guys from Ohio and Arizona to figure out that there are 24,000 Medicare options out there, usually pretty hard for the average Joe to figure out what's going on. Steelers fans are completely lost. Dial pound 250. Pretty easy. Hashtag 250. Okay, Steelers fans call it hashtag. Everyone else calls it pound. I want to make it easy for everyone. Pound 250 and say Chapter Medicare. They'll take it from there. They know what they're doing. Big Dad has arrived. They will finally help you out. Big Data has arrived. Dwayne, I do want to thank you, even though you were bad at Food for the Poor. Did you get my PhD weight loss in last week?
I did.
864?
644.
1900.
That's 864.
644.
1900.
Did you have laryngitis?
I did not.
You see, no one can do this show like I can when they have laryngitis.
Well, that's true.
That's true. It's absolutely true. Did you stress eat last week when I was gone?
I did not. I actually had fun doing it last week. It was we had a couple of really big news days.
I didn't notice anything.
Well, you wouldn't.
I was sick.
You were sick and you were surrounded by Smalls.
Oh, gosh, was I ever surrounded by Smalls. Genghis Kate was sick first, so she wasn't her typical Genghis Kate. Right before that, T-Rex Teddy was sick. And then, of course, it's Tag. I'm it.
Yeah.
Yep. Just in time to fly on the airplane, put my head back with a pounding sinus headache. Say, call the doctor. Get me a Z-Pack and some prednisone, please.
Stat.
So we're going to hope it kicks in overnight. But in the meantime, if you need to lose weight, do it, Dwayne did. My PhD weight loss, 864.
644.
1900.
You'll feel much better in April.
I will feel terrible if we do not pass this CR. We got to pass this CR. Would you make this my 1 minute, Harley? Put this on. We must pass the CR. Call your 2 senators and your 1 representative. Call their office. Do not let the government shut down. Keep the deportations going. Keep the defense buildup rolling. Keep the doging. Get it done. Pass the CR. Every Republican. Maybe we can find 7 Democrats who love their country in the Senate to go along with the 53 Republicans. Tom Massey, please, Crystal La Savita. Please follow through. Time for relief factor. Don't think it's going to help with the. No, not time for relief factor. I will tell you more about it when I come back. Bad day on the markets. Don't get worried. Do not get worried. All's going to be well, especially if we pass that CR. But Olivia Beaver has joined me. Hi, Olivia. I'm burdened with laryngitis today, so I'm going to have you explain the CR and why Thomas Massie is in Congress.
Well, I can explain the last part because his constituents keep voting him in. But so the CR will essentially cut some non-discretionary funding. It will give more border money, more military money, but honestly keep spending levels about the same. And it's to go through September 30th. This is probably Speaker Johnson's best chance of getting government funding through, but he is in the position where he has to do it with largely Republican votes. We're not sure if any Democrats are going to support it. There's a chance that some of them might. So the numbers are looking rocky. Most of the conservative Republicans are getting in line. Thomas Massie is not a fan of it, but that still might be okay as long as some of the other question mark Republicans, Tony Gonzalez, Corey Mills, some of those who I think will ultimately end up supporting it. The math needs to work since it's such a thin majority that if they can get some Democrats, if they minimize defections, Johnson will be able to get it through. And then it puts Senate Democrats in this uncomfortable position, but it has to get out of the House first.
Yeah, this is what I don't understand about Massie. Or anyone who opposes this, is that 7 Democrats are not going to vote for this, right, in the Senate. Need 60 votes in the Senate. So the government's going to shut down. It's only a question of who we're going to blame for it. And I don't want to get blamed for it because the Republicans are willing to work on a 6-month deal and, in the meantime, get reconciliation and budget done. Why would any Republican not want to put Democrats in that position? Just a partisan matter.
I think Massie has an issue with the amount that it will add to the deficit and some of that. And he says, why would we be passing the spending bill when we already have DOGE doing some of this cutting? Why would we keep government levels at the same?
We don't need to cover it. We don't need. He also put some incoherent stuff about the defense industrial complex. Ends a war in Afghanistan, starts one in Ukraine. He's a nut. All right. And I'm on in Kentucky. Thomas Massie is a nut. Anyone who puts engineer in their X bio is a nut. And so he's a nut. And so I don't have any time for him, but we lost our one vote. We got a few other shaky people too, right?
Yes, but I feel like if the president gives these members a phone call, they're going to be way more willing to work with him. Massie is a little bit different. Massie, if you even go back to COVID years, at one point he was the only member, Democrat and Republican, who refused to vote on money to basically help pay for COVID funds. And so he refused.
I don't want to go back to Massie. We don't need any more. We don't need more. He's a moron. He's a moron. Every caucus has 1 or 2. Republicans have sometimes 4 or 5, but Massie is always a moron. I want to talk to you about this. Is there a chance of finding 7 Democrats? Just say yes in the Senate.
There's certainly a possibility because some Democrats, if it's a choice between this CR and the government shutting down, have indicated that they don't want to shut down. And it might complicate their messaging, which they've also been, but they're in the minds of Democrats, they don't have a good hand to play right now because they're concerned that if they don't fund the government, Elon Musk will have more power. And if they do fund the government in the way that this government funding bill is written, which doesn't provide sort of the guidelines that Democrats wanted for how the administration is going to use the funds, which would basically rein in Elon Musk and his work. Democrats were not able to get that in this funding bill. Republicans said it's a non-starter. So Democrats would either be kind of authorizing Elon Musk to have more power and room to decide.
I know. Make my day. Make my day. Let Elon Musk operate when the government is shuttered and there's no appropriation guidance. Make my day. But John Ossoff would have to also walk around Georgia and explain why everything is shuttered, right? And
yes, exactly.
Where else
so
are they weak?
On their back feet.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Where else are they? They're weak in Michigan. and Minnesota, right? Tina Smith is quitting, and Gary Ghost is quitting up in Michigan.
And I mean, some Democrats are already saying they're going to back it, but others are, I think, purposefully. I read, one of my former colleagues reported that leadership is actually advising them not to say how they plan to vote. They want to see if House Republicans
That's
succeed.
leadership.
They want,
Well, that's leadership.
They want,
I love it.
they want to game it out politically, and some of them are pushing for a 1-month CR so that they can argue, like, let's go back, let's figure this out, let's instead of moving it to September 30th. But I do also want to highlight here the fact that Freedom Caucus members are on board. Some of them are basically never CR Republicans.
Chip Roy. Chip Roy's all for it.
It's a huge testament to Donald Trump and his team basically working these members and saying, you got to get on board. I don't want this to be holding up my agenda. I want this money to enact my agenda. And so a ton of power is sort of being, even if it's not speaking loudly, it's speaking clearly in this moment.
Now, a technical question, Olivia. Originally, Senator Soon said that there was a possibility of two CRs. Two reconciliation budget processes. If the CR passes, does that mean there's only one?
I don't think it discounts the chance of two eventually.
Okay, I think it does. But I'll let you're the reporter. I'm going to go let you report on that one. Olivia Beavers at the Wall Street Journal. Thank you for filling in, especially on a day.
Gotta get me on one of those questions each time, Hugh.
I don't know either. Nobody knows what the budget stuff is. It's the craziest doggone thing. We need a new budget. We need everything. Thank you, Olivia. Follow it Olivia_Beavers on X with the Wall Street Journal. Back in studio after a week off with the grandkids back east. They gave me this present, laryngitis. So I'll do my best this week. President Trump on Air Force One, talking about the most important meetings in the world going on today between Secretary Rubio, National Security Advisor Waltz, representatives of Ukraine and Saudi Arabia. Cut number 15.
Sir, so on Russia, have you made a final decision about what sanctions or tariffs you might impose on Russia and when that might be?
We're looking at a lot of things. We have big meetings coming up, as you know, in Saudi Arabia. That's going to include Russia. It'll be Ukraine. We'll see if we can get something done. I'd like to get something done. A lot of people died this week, as you know, in Ukraine. Not only Ukrainians, but Russians. So I think everybody wants to see it get done. We're going to make a lot of progress, I believe, this week.
And then he was talked about more 22, again, Ukraine.
Are you going to resume aid to Ukraine if they sign the minerals deal?
Well, I think they will sign the minerals deal, but I want them to want peace. Right
How do
now,
they show that? How do they show they want peace?
Well, right now they haven't shown it to the extent that they should. I think right now they haven't, but I think they will be, and I think it's going to become evident over the next 2 or 3 days. I think eventually, look, we have to have peace. And I'm doing this. Money is one thing. We're going to lose. We spent $350 billion on this. But the big thing, human life. Thousands of people this week, thousands of young soldiers died this week. Hundreds of people died in cities in Ukraine. And we got to get it stopped. It would have never happened if I was president, and it didn't happen. This was not going to happen. By the way, October 7th wouldn't have happened. Inflation wouldn't have happened. The Afghanistan, the way not that they left, but the way that they left, it looks so bad. Probably the most embarrassing day in the history of our country. That wouldn't have happened. A lot of things wouldn't have happened, but it is what it is. I think we're going to have a good time. I think we're going to have a good result in Saudi Arabia, meaning they're hosting the various talks, and we have a lot of good people going out there, and I think Ukraine's going to do well, and I think Russia's going to do well. I think some very big things could happen this week. I hope so. So 2,000 people, at least 2,000 young soldiers have died this week, and this is almost on a constant basis, a couple of thousand soldiers a week. It's a killing field, and we got to stop it, and if I can stop it, I'll be very happy.
Then he went on. Last comment the president made today about Ukraine on Air Force One, cut number 23.
Would you consider lifting the intel pause on Ukraine? What does Ukraine have?
Well, we just about have. I mean, we really just about have. And we want to do anything we can to get Ukraine to be serious about getting something done. I say they don't have the cards. Nobody really has the cards. Russia doesn't have the cards. They don't have. What you have to do is you have to make a deal. And you have to stop the killing. It's a senseless
Now, I did get a
war.
question as well about stock market turbulence. The market report is brought to you by AmericanFederal.com. If you want to buy gold today, do it from Nick Grovich and his team. Nick and his team can be reached at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694. Story in the Financial Times, how the gold bullion boom sent a U.S. recession alarm blaring. Everyone's overreading this too much. Uncertainty causes markets to go up and down. President got a question about it. Cut number 17.
President, Robert, go ahead.
Americans have seen their retirement accounts fall in recent days. They're getting very nervous about these tariff conversations.
Oh, I think the tariffs are going to be the greatest thing we've ever done as a country. It's going to make our country rich again. We have many companies, as you know, auto companies are opening up plants now. We've had 4 or 5 announced already, but many more are coming. And we're basically going to take back the money, or a lot of the money that we've given away over many decades. We've lost our jobs. We've lost our factories. We've lost 90,000 factories since the beginning of NAFTA. It's not that long ago. 90,000 factories. Think of that. And we're going to get them back. And they're coming back. And they're coming back in records. Look at what happened with the big chip company, the biggest in the world. By far the most powerful chip company in the world, from Taiwan. And they're going in with $200 billion of money, and they're going to build something that's going to give us 35-40% of the chip market in one company. No, it's going to bring it back, and I think it's going to make us bring us to a level that we've never had before.
Well, in the meantime, though, it does unsettle markets. That's a short-term thing. Dow's down 2.2% at this hour. S&P down 3%. NASDAQ down 4%. Even gold is down less than 1%. Gold today at $2,889 an ounce. You've been waiting for a dip to buy. Today is that day. It's a dip. If that's you, call Nick Grovich and the team at American Federal, 800-221-7694. Maybe you just need to sell today. Nick buys and sells every day. 800-221-7694. 800-221-7694. Dr. Michael Oren was the ambassador of Israel to the United States. He is now a fellow at the Wilson Center, but I find him in Israel today. Dr. Oren, welcome back. That's good news for the Wilson Center. Rob Lutwak, I don't know if he's there anymore, but was my friend for years. Jane Harmon, I think, is retired as well. Who's running the Wilson Center now?
Yeah. Ambassador Mark Green.
Oh, very good. Oh, very good. Well,
Good man.
congratulations on
Very
that.
good.
But I rather than just talk about the Wilson Center, will you explain what the heck's going on in Syria? Because I've read a lot of different things. I saw a lot of horrific pictures and stories, but I don't know what to believe.
What's going on in Syria, Hugh, is what inevitable was going to happen in Syria. All right, Syria, a country created by the French to serve French interests, cobbled together all these different ethnicities that didn't get along. The only way Syria ever was held together was by a preponderance of central brutal force, like the Assad family. The minute you remove that force, the country falls apart into various ethnic groups who begin to fight with one another. So now you have the Druze fighting the Sunnis, you have the Alawites fighting the Sunnis. And, from our perspective, I think it's in Israel's interest, it's in the interest of the Middle East and America, that Syria breaks up into little states that can't threaten their neighbors, because ever since Syria came into being, it did nothing but threaten its neighbors, and Israel's not the only one. And this was inevitable because the guys who ousted Assad and his army aren't going to be the same type of rulers that Assad was. They just don't have it. And it's absolutely inevitable what's happening. Tragic. But
So there are two things I saw that I wanted to ask you. The first is that Israel has pledged to protect the Druze communities in the suburbs of Damascus, which I think would be a good thing. It's not that far from Israel. And the second, which I can't believe, is that the new government agreed with the Kurds that the Kurds could run their own place. Is that Turkey does not like the Kurds? I can't imagine that happening.
Yeah, I don't know. Go figure what's going on in Syria in that way. It's gonna break apart. unless somebody emerges and says, as Assad did. He and his father said the same thing. You are a Syrian. You have your loyalty to me. If not, I'm going to kill you. And that's how Syria was held together.
So what about the Druze and the Israelis for whom there is a special relationship?
Special relationship, we'll do our best to defend them. They're in Damascus. It's not as if they're adjacent to us. There's some areas that are closer to us. I was actually with a Druze friend today and talking about this, the degree to which we can actually help them. He was rather skeptical of the degree to which, really physically, militarily, we can help the Jews, other than saying to these new Tahrir people in Damascus, saying, don't you dare harm the Druze.
Okay, now moving down south to Gaza, our new special envoy on hostage affairs may have gotten carried away with himself. I think that's what, without embarrassing him, Team Rubio is trying to say, is that he embarrassed us and we're sorry. Is that how you understand it?
I do. I think they're already walking it back. Yesterday was a delicate day because, the last thing anybody needs right now is an open altercation between Israel and the Trump administration. We've been working hand in glove and really making a big impact on the Middle East by not showing daylight to our common enemies. And what happened in the last couple of days was daylight, very blinding daylight. And it generally not just Israelis. People in the administration were disturbed by the reports that of direct talks between the United States and Hamas, which is a tremendous, tremendous victory for Hamas. You can't imagine what a victory that is. And the question is, did the United States get anything back for it? I mean, did Hamas have to give anything in order for that recognition? And there are many other things that were said about, Hamas being nice guys and Hamas willing to lay it down its arms, and left a lot of us scratching our heads. I'll tell you something, probably the worst criticism I could have is that it reminded me of President Obama in 2010.
Right.
I can't say anything worse about somebody.
No, that's it. All right. Let me ask you about a story that I covered on a special report on Friday night when I was in D.C. for one night before I got sick. I noticed that a B-52 flew a special mission with an Israeli F-35 and an Israeli F-15. Yep. That told me a lot. What did it tell you?
It told me that there's a military option on the table and that it's real, and which is a very important message. Now, at the same time, the reports that President Trump had written a letter to the Supreme Leader, to Khamenei, in his first week in office. The president wrote to the Supreme Leader of Iran saying that he's want to negotiate. Now, I always assumed that President Trump wants to negotiate, but that sort of brought me back to 2009 when the first thing that President Obama did his first week in office was to write this very similar letter to the Supreme Leader. I just think their approach is going to be very different. And Obama tried to incentivize, i.e. buy the Iranian cooperation on a nuclear negotiation. I think that President Trump will impose punishing sanctions on Iran, and the Iranians, if they come to the table, will come to the table begging for an agreement, which would in fact be good.
That's what he said this morning. Let me play this for you, Michael Oren. Cut number 11, Donald Trump on Fox this morning with Maria Bartiromo talking about Iran.
There are two ways Iran can be handled, militarily or you make a deal. I would prefer to make a deal because I'm not looking to hurt Iran. They're great people. I know so many Iranians from this country.
Well, not the leadership.
No, not the leadership.
The people.
They're very evil people. No, but the people of Iran are great people. But they had a tough regime, and they'd meet and they'd be shot in the streets. I mean, it was a tough deal. But I would rather negotiate a deal. I'm not sure that everybody agrees with me, but we can make a deal that would be just as good as if you won militarily.
Let me stop there, Michael. I think that's true, but they'd have to throw open every single door on instant notice for Americans to look and Israelis to look, even if they're there along with the Americans. I don't think Iran's going to do that, but they could do it, right?
I think any agreement that doesn't provide for the dismantling of Iran's nuclear program will be very problematic for the state of Israel. Because if it's not dismantled, the Iranians will cheat. They'll cheat. They lie. That's what they do. And you may buy some time with that, but you're only going to be buying time. You have to have a verified dismantling of the nuclear program.
But they're not even going to get to step one, which is open the door. That's why I start with that. Because we know where that in the last time we had a deal with the JCPOA, they took like half the country and said, you can't go here. So they're not going to open the doors.
No, they're not. And some they may open up doors, but those be false doors. They're not going to open up the real doors.
So there's really one option. There's really one option. And that B-52
is looking very good. That B-52 is looking very good.
Dr. Oren with the Wilson Center. Great to talk to you. Follow him online at Dr. Michael Oren. Dr. Michael Oren with laryngitis, but I'm back from a week's vacation. Randy Weingarten, enemy of education in America. Only way to say it. She's for keeping kids trapped in failing schools. She's against school choice. She's for the bureaucrats at the Department of Education. She makes way too much money. She was on MSNBC yesterday screaming about the attempt to shutter the DOE. Cut 24.
This is why so many people are so mad about it, because they're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So billionaires, kids of billionaires, they have it. They go to private schools. Everyone else, 90%, go to public schools. Don't take away their opportunity.
So let's stay on the facts.
Sorry.
No,
I'm
do
really
not
angry about this.
No, because this
I'm
is
really
angry.
Let's stay on the fact. The fact is, what we need is education freedom in the United States, and that's what Job Creators Network is doing. They're a great sponsor of our show. And Alfredo Ortiz and the team at JCN have set up educationfreedomusa.com, educationfreedomusa.com. Go there, get involved. School choice will make all the difference in the world. It's working in Iowa and Ohio. It's working in Florida and West Virginia. It's working in Arizona. Now it's work at Tennessee. And our friends at American Legislative Exchange Council are all over it. But our friends at JCN have set up a website devoted specifically to it. And what's wrong with American education? Randy Weingarten leads the teachers union. Listen to her again.
This is why so many people are so mad about it, because they're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So billionaires, kids of billionaires, they have it. They go to private schools. Everyone else, 90%, go to public schools. Don't take away their opportunity.
So let's stay on the facts.
Sorry.
No,
I'm
do
really
not
angry
apologize.
about this.
No, because this
I'm
is what
really
people
angry.
need to hear.
I taught kids in Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn, New York.
Great. Isn't that wonderful? She taught in high school once, and she's a moron. She's like Thomas Massey of the left. Everyone's got him. She doesn't make any sense. She's got an iron grip on her union. She's stopping kids from getting it. Have you seen the nation's report card scores? 4th grade math, 8th grade math, but it's really reading, which is worse. We have a crisis. She's not doing anything except going on MSNBC. Who is she talking to? There's nobody watching that. She's talking to her members. That's who she's talking to. I wish Dennis Prager were back on the air already. By the way, here's a little bit of Dennis to tide you over.
I have a new one for you today on happiness. You ready? The more you are able to say, I was wrong, the happier you will be. If you take responsibility for being wrong, you will be happier. It's tough to do, but it's tough to be happy. You cannot be happy if you do not take responsibility for your errors.
I hope you saw David Prager, his update on Dennis, who was talking more. We played it last week. In the meantime, tiding you over, Pragertopia. Go and join. They're all evergreens. They're always great. Stuff you wouldn't be able to find anyway. Go to Pragertopia. It's right there. Join up. Good morning, glory, and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening today. I'm a little under the weather. I was away last week, thanks to Dwayne, who filled in on Monday and Friday, thanks to Kurt Schlichter, who was here on Tuesday. Mark Davis was here on Wednesday. Ed Morrissey on Thursday. They did a great job, but I wish I had, I don't time my breaks when I teach. I take the week off that spring break comes along, and that was last week. And, of course, I went and saw my grandkids. And, of course, I came back with the plague that they've got, because 5-year-olds and 2-year-olds always have something, and then they give it to the grandparents. And I'm over the worst of it, but the laryngitis lingers and will. Luckily, President Trump did Maria Bartiromo this morning, then went on Air Force One, did a gaggle. I'm going to do the gaggle right now. He got into it with a Washington Post reporter, cut number 16.
President Putin disrespecting you by attacking Ukraine when you're trying to make peace there? Is President Putin disrespecting you by attacking Ukraine when you're trying to make peace there?
What did he do?
Well, he's attacking Ukraine.
Is he disrespecting me?
Yeah.
Who are you with?
I'm Michael Burnbaum, the Washington Post.
You've lost a lot of credibility. Go ahead.
They lost a lot more today. Ruth Marcus quit today. Ruth is my longtime friend. She's wrong about everything, but she's smart about everything. So she covered the Justice Department back in the days when I was a briefcase carrying special assistant for Ed Meese and William French Smith. And she was understood to be, that's the Harvard Law School lass who's smarter than anyone down here, so don't talk to her. I mean, we left her for Terry Eastland, the public affairs people, to deal with, because you couldn't put anything past Ruth. Then 10 years ago, she and Fred Hyatt had me go to work for the Post. Fred died, and then Ruth laid down a marker yesterday, and they put it on the spike, and she said goodbye. It's a red line. I've done that twice. Been told by newspapers before they weren't going to run a column I'd written and turned in, and I left. Because if it's something that matters to you, I mean, sometimes it doesn't fit, or the budget isn't there, or someone wrote it the day before you. But that's not this. She wrote a piece critical of the Bezos letter. And they put it on the spike, and Ruth, who has a lot of integrity, a lot of brains, said, see you later. And my hat is off to Ruth. A lot of smarts there. Post cannot lose many more. They're going to be left with, I don't know, they're going to have Jim Garrity, Ramesh, and a bunch of people of the left. Mark Thiessen, of course, is still there. That's good. Let's go to Donald Trump on Air Force One, cut number 12, talking about Department of Defense.
I said cut. No, it's not in these days. I'd love to cut defense spending, but not now. Because you have China, you have Russia, you have a lot of problems out there. No.
In fact,
no. What I have said is, we spend a lot of money on nuclear missiles, nuclear weapons. The level of destruction is beyond anything you can even imagine. It's just bad that everybody has to spend all this money on something that, if it's used, it's probably the end of the world.
Wow. I don't know what to say to that.
You know, when I listen to these climate lunatics, and they talk about global warming, and they say the ocean's going to rise 1/8 of an inch in the next 300 years, and and nobody ever talks about nuclear weapons or some of the other things, but the nuclear weapons in particular right now. And they talk about the climate, and they talk about the dangers of the climate, but they don't talk about the dangers of a nuclear weapon, which could happen tomorrow. They said 300 years. I watched Biden for years say the existential threat. He loved the term existential threat. Our greatest existential threat is from the climate. And I said, no. The greatest is sitting in shelves in various countries called nuclear weapons that are big monsters that can blow your heads off for miles and miles and miles. And they never mention that.
The president is so right. I'm going to talk with Admiral Montgomery next hour about this, because we have to update the Columbia class, the Ohio class, great, best named ships in the world, the Ohio class boomers. But they're running out of gas, and they'll be all gone in 10 years, and we got to get the Columbia class into the water, and that wasn't front and center when Secretary Hegseth was talking about why they need to reprogram money. I think it's just assumed, and that made me feel good. Meanwhile, on Air Force One, he talked about the China-Iran war game, cut number 21.
China and Iran are doing military exercises together. Does that concern you?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Why not?
Because we're stronger than all of them. We have more power than all of them. I rebuilt the military. Unfortunately, Biden did nothing with it, but I rebuilt the military. But we don't want to even talk about that. I think if you look at what's happening, and if you see what we've done, and if you see where we've come, and let's see what happens with the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. I think you're going to have eventually, and maybe not in the distant future, you're going to have some pretty good results coming out of Saudi Arabia this week.
I hope he's right. I hope they get that settled. I hope we can get our defense spending focused entirely on America's weaponry and its troops. He was asked about China's trade rhetoric as well. Cut number 18. Cut number 19.
Are you alarmed by escalatory rhetoric from the Chinese response to your tariffs? And are you planning to meet with Xi Jinping about trade anytime?
No, they took that rhetoric back, as you know. They were very tough, and I said, whoa, what's that all about? That rhetoric was taken back. You know that, right?
My question to you is...
but if you know that, why would you ask that question?
Are you planning to meet with
Gosh, I love the
Yeah,
president.
at some point I will. I have a very good
Dumb
relationship
question.
with President Xi.
Don't ask dumb questions. I have to put a request in and get him on again soon. He knows I don't ask dumb questions. I won't waste his time. He gets asked about the Sparky cabinet meeting last week. And it was Sparky, cut number 20.
Well, I don't think the tensions are high. Look, Elon's a very special person, and these cabinet people are special people. You know, these are very successful people, or they wouldn't have gotten, they've attained the highest heights of government. And I think they have a fantastic relationship to Elon. And Doge has been incredible. Hundreds of billions of dollars of waste and fraud and abuse has been already found. And that doesn't mean they don't have a little bit of an argument here and there about something, or maybe personnel arguments. There's not too many contract arguments. Contracts have been found. This is much more than just personnel. We found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraudulent contracts, or very wasteful. But I think fraud. I think it's fraud.
There was just another plane crash. And
I think really the cabinet, for the most part, I think they get along really well with Elon.
Yeah, it got sparky last week. I was on, Aisha was in for Brett on Friday, but I did special report because I was flying back to California yesterday, and I had some voice. So I went on there and I told him, don't ask me much, but if you want to talk about Marco and Elon getting sparky, happy to do that. Sometimes things get sparky, and that's okay. I've been in a lot of negotiations over a quarter century as a lawyer. Sometimes you got to blow off a little steam, and the room cools down, then you get the deal done. I also want to just point out, the president did like 10 questions on Air Force One today. Does anyone remember? Hey, Dwayne, did Biden do that at all ever?
No, absolutely not. He would come back and he'd wave to him, and then he'd go off somewhere. But he didn't spend any time answering questions. He couldn't hear him.
It's just I can't. I'm not making it up.
No. I mean, again, you're at a 15-to-1, 20-to-1 ratio, questions to answers, so far in 6 weeks.
Yeah, I'm really good. Cut number 5. This is Donald Trump, Fox, with Maria Bartiromo this morning.
What we have to do is build a strong country. You can't really watch the stock market. If you look at China, they have a 100-year perspective. We have a quarter. We go by quarters.
That's true.
And you can't go by that. You have to do what's right. What we're doing is we're building a tremendous foundation for the future. Tremendous foundation. Everything's been taken away. We don't make ships anymore. We don't, you just saw one of the biggest shipbuilders in the world, one of the biggest shipping people in the whole world.
In the Oval Office with you.
In the Oval Office. He's announcing a $20 billion investment in the United States, which he would have never done except for this. But look at this. Honda, Toyota, they're all coming in. You take a look at what's happening. The chip maker, the greatest chipper, Mr. Wei, the biggest in the world by far, is going to spend $200 billion on making a massive plant to make chips.
So that's your message? Build it here?
Build it here, there's no tariff.
Yeah, build it here, no tariff. Now look, I'm not of the school that tariffs can replace the income tax, but I don't mind doing national security stuff, and we need chips and ships. So tariffs on chips and ships, I'm all for it. Senator Tom Cotton is chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He joins me. Senator apologized for the laryngitis. I went and saw the grandkids that I got last week, and they gave me a parting gift. I'm sick, but I still wanted to ask you about what China was doing in Australia last week.
Well, they were up to no good as usual, Hugh. They have a long-standing campaign of intimidation and aggression towards Australia. When Australia announced years ago that they were going to conduct a inquiry into the origins of COVID, if I recall, that China cut the import of basically every major Australian product into mainland China, beef, lamb, wine, and so forth, as a way to kind of bring Australia to heel. This is just another example of how China tries to intimidate their smaller neighbors and hope that they can peel them off from the United States. In this case, an explicit ally of the United States.
Now, Senator, your book, 7 Things You Can't Say About China, was #1 on the New York Times. That cannot make China happy, can it?
I imagine it did not, no. I mean, I've already been sanctioned by China, so I'm not sure that they can impose even more sanctions on me. Let's just say that we're not counting on a lot of overseas sales in mainland China.
Well, it might be doing well in Taiwan. You tell me about that. Are you glad to see Taiwan Semiconductor building here?
Yeah, I do think it's really important for our national security and for our economic prosperity, Hugh. Look, we're never going to get all of Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company's production off of Taiwan, and that's fine. It's a Taiwanese company. They understandably want to continue to have Taiwan as their main manufacturing site. But what really needs to happen for America's safety and prosperity is to build enough redundant and resilient manufacturing capacity here in the United States that we can supply or we can survive any kind of disruption of semiconductor supply coming from Taiwan, whether it's the kind of routine, normal chips that go into things like appliances and tractors and automobiles, or the most cutting-edge high-end chips, of which Taiwan produces almost all the supply for the world. So I think it's a very welcome development. I commend the president for working to get it done, and we need to see more of it.
Senator, if I can change to the continuing resolution, which the House hopes to pass and then go to the Senate, are there 7 Democrats that will join with 53 Republicans to keep the government open next week?
Well, I can't say for sure, Hugh, but I believe so. I expect the House of Representatives is going to pass this short-term spending bill tomorrow. And if they send it to us, it'll be Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats' decision whether or not they want to shut down the government because they didn't get to play out their temper tantrum in real time. Again, their demands are facetious. They want full-year spending bills. Well, you know what? Republicans would have liked that as well. That's why we worked to pass all 12 of the spending bills out of committee last year, and Chuck Schumer didn't bring a single one up to the floor. So I don't really need to hear Chuck Schumer crying crocodile tears right now that we didn't fund the government until halfway through the fiscal year. Or they want unprecedented constraints on Donald Trump's ability to deploy those resources of the kind that we've never placed on any president in history. And obviously, Donald Trump and congressional Republicans will not agree to that unreasonable demand.
Now, Senator, I also want to bring to your attention, Eli Lake wrote a piece for the Free Press yesterday, how Donald Trump loosened the rules for hunting terrorists. It quotes our old friend Sebastian Gorka a lot about the new Trump regime when it comes to taking out people who threaten Americans. Have you noticed the change? What do you make of it?
Well, Hugh, I haven't read Eli's piece. I'll look it up, but it's consistent with everything I know about what President Trump has done. It's consistent with what he did in his first term as well. I remember very vividly speaking to President Trump in the early days of his administration about someone in the Middle East taking a shot at some terrorist bad guy. And he's like, well, why are you calling me? It's the middle of the night. I don't know who this person is. Don't you have a colonel over there that knows this guy better? I said, well, you said to keep in place all of President Obama's policies and guidelines. So you had a chance to review them. It was like, well, change this one now. You're authorized to take the shot, and in the future, get someone who's closer to the battlefield and understands what the situation is, and give him authority to take the shot. So it's very consistent with what President Trump did in his first term, and you can see the results of it as well. We've taken out terrorists in Somalia, Syria, and elsewhere. President Trump very much believes that we should trust commanders on the battlefield to make those kind of tactical decisions.
Now,
obviously, some decisions have to be reserved for the president, but he is empowering.
I want to turn to Homeland Security. They're not killing anyone, but they're putting people on planes. One of them is Mohammed Khalil, who was picked up by immigration officers at Colombia for violating terms of a green card. Now, I had to go look up what could lose your green card. Cooperation with a terrorist organization can lose you your green card. By definition, if you're pro-Hamas, I don't think you get a green card. What do you think?
Oh, I agree with that, Hugh. I mean, yeah, of course, it's easier to remove someone before they get a green card, and therefore we should be more judicious and discriminating about how we screen people for green cards, but we certainly shouldn't be giving green cards to anyone who is sympathetic to and supportive of Hamas, a designated U.S. terrorist organization, or any other terrorist organization. And if you have one, then it's perfectly within the law to revoke it as well. I mean, thank goodness that he was able to convert that green card into full-fledged American citizenship.
And I hope it's a message to everyone else who's involved in this. What about the $400 million that Colombia isn't going to get? I don't want him to get anything. Actually, Colombia has violated Title VI for a year now. What do you think?
Colombia should have thought long and hard for years before it allowed itself to be turned into a hotbed for anti-Semitic violence and agitation, disrupting the learning environment for students of all faiths, or no faiths at all, but especially targeting Jewish students on campus for harassment. I would also suggest that any other college that has done the same take a look in the mirror very quickly and fix its anti-Semitism problem.
All right. I want to close by talking to you about the situation in Syria. I saw a lot this weekend traveling back from the East Coast to the West, but I don't know what to believe. There's so many different pictures of alleged mass murders by the new jihadis in charge of Damascus against the Alawites in the mountain. What's your understanding, Senator, from Open Source Matters?
Well, I've seen some of the similar images, Hugh, that you did. It's certainly very troubling. I have not been back to the Capitol and been able to get a secure briefing from the intelligence community. I'll get that soon. It's certainly plausible to believe that these videos are new and they reflect the kind of violence that is alleged they represent in Syria. That place obviously has long had sectarian divisions and has struggled through a brutal civil war for 14 years now. So it's plausible, but I would suggest things you see on social media, especially from third world countries like Syria, at face value until you have a chance to confirm them, and that's what I hope to do later this week.
One thing I did see on social media was a B-52 of ours flying with an Israeli F-35 and an Israeli F-15. Did you see that, and what do you make of it?
Well, I think it's a reflection of the deep military cooperation between our two countries. Obviously, the United States has certain capabilities that Israel lacks. Those are well known. Aerial refueling, although we're trying to address that by providing Israel tankers as fast as we can. That's still a few years out. And heavy bombers that can carry the heaviest kind of penetrating ordnance. So I think if you're sitting in Tehran right now, you should see that kind of imagery and think twice about whether or not you want to try to rush towards a nuclear bomb.
Well said, Senator Cotton. Thank you. Always a pleasure. Congratulations. #1 book in America, 7 Things You Can't Say About China. You should go and order it because all of America's reading public can't be wrong. They're right. 7 Things You Can't Say About China. Very important book. Go and get it. Send it to your friends. Send it to anyone who knows anything or wants to about China. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Food for the Poor. Once a year in March, I appeal to you to support Food for the Poor. Now, there's a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Feed them. You can't miss it. Even a Steelers fan cannot miss it. And I've moved to the afternoon, so it's a new audience. You don't know much about Food for the Poor. It's been going on for, I think, 45 years, maybe 50. Originally began as a Catholic organization. It's now non-denominational Christians. They work throughout the world, but they are especially in Central America. And this year, we are focusing especially on the needs in El Salvador, which I applaud. El Salvador is doing everything right. They have stopped the gangs from terrorizing their people. They have reopened schools that have been closed for years. They have stopped caravans and illegal migration. They're cooperating with the United States. Their new president gets along with our new president very, very well. But they still have an enormous need. Now, I just came from spending time with grandkids, my 2 and a 5-year-old. I can't imagine what it would be like if they couldn't have lunch. And for millions of kids in El Salvador, the only way they get lunch is Food for the Poor. They run the food in the school program throughout most of El Salvador. Those schools have reopened. You can't expect those kids to learn. You can't expect those kids to thrive if they don't get anything to eat. Now, Food for the Poor is not magic. I see people giving away millions of dollars and starting new 501c3s and dedicating themselves to this or that, announcing how they're going to try and scale something. Food for the Poor started with rice and beans 50 years ago, and they're still doing that along with vitamins and nutritional supplements. And they've been doing it through churches. Originally, a few priests got bigger. They joined up with some pastors, got bigger, and joined up with some laymen, and it got bigger. And their overhead remains very, very low because they know how to do this. They got tons of food to get places. They just got to move it. They just need you to help. $100 feeds one child lunch for a year. $300, 3 kids. Okay, Steelers fan, we want to feed 10 kids for a year. What's it going to take? $1,000. It's free agent day in the NFL, so Ian Rappaport is blowing up my Twitter feed with people making $40 million a year for being a right tackle, and God bless them. If they need to find a place to give their money, they don't need to start a foundation. Write a check for Food for the Poor. Could you help us make our goal? It's not $40 million. $100 gift, one time, feeds a child for an entire year. So please be as generous as you can. Feed Their Future is the banner this year. We change it up a little bit every year, trying to attract new eyeballs. Feed Their Future, or you can call them at 855-359-4673. One of the reasons I wanted to come in today, even though it probably sets back laryngitis repair a couple of days, is I want to tell you this is my group. I approve it every year. I'm glad they came with me to the afternoons. I think they're fabulous. They do great work. So we got 5 fingers. One is for your church. Remember to give to it. One is for a parachurch organization. That would be Food for the Poor. One is for a school that helped you. Mine's John F. Kennedy High School in Warren, Ohio. One is for a school that got nothing to do with you. Might be a charter school. In this case, it could be a school in El Salvador. And then one is for a veterans organization. I like thefund.org. Find 5 things to give money to, because that's what you got 5 fingers on a hand to remind you. Food for the Poor, you can trust. I've trusted them for years. They get the job done. They are great stewards. And if you're driving around right now, Chris Stegall moves in the morning and somebody says, hey, I like you, you're funny, and they gave him $20,000. Good for you, Chris. That belongs to me. That should go into my account. I think so. Don't you think that's fair, Dwayne? They should just move it from his account into my account.
I think we started out the year in that time slot, so we inherit
all that.
Yes,
I think that's the case. But maybe you, whoever gave Chris $20,000, maybe you want to do that again, double it maybe. All you have to do is go to HughHewitt.com.
We wouldn't turn it down.
We will not turn it down. It will go to good purpose. It will really go to great work. And I've devoted the whole segment to this because I don't know how long this voice is going to go this week. This happens to me once a year or 2 years, every 2 years, once every 2 or 3 years. Twice a year?
Twice a year.
Okay, so it happens. But I'm not hungry. I can still read. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt will still feed me. I ate in an airport yesterday, so that's not really eating.
Orange Food Group.
But I'm here to tell you the Orange Food Group will get you a long way. This is not Orange Food Group. This is beans and rice and protein, and for the people who need it most. Food for the Poor. Feed Their Future banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Thank you for being generous. The Washington Free Beacon never disappoints, and its weekend editor, Vic Mattis, joins me. Dismantling Black Lives Matter Plaza. Watch. I went over there, and I didn't even know it was on there, Vic. But you've got the live stream of the end of the Black Lives Matter mural. Is that in front of the Hay Adams?
Yes, Hugh. Hello, and that is correct. That is in front of the Hay Adams on 16th Street, across from Lafayette Park. And I always felt bad for the Hay Adams. That's where I got married 20 years ago. And I wondered if they had to change all their stationery to say Black Lives Matter Plaza instead of 16th Street. But what I gather is they didn't bother to change, so they saved themselves.
Did you get married in the top room with the best view in D.C.?
Yes, we had the reception there. We actually got married at Dahlgren Chapel in Georgetown. And then the reception, the cocktail part was upstairs. It was lovely. Yeah.
We did the same thing for our friend Alexandra and her father, Glenn, and mother Susan. And it was a fabulous. The only thing that happened at that wedding is that Glenn and Susan had so much fun and everyone else went out and got their picture taken with the White House behind them. They forgot to do it.
Oh, no. Yeah, I don't think I have one either. And this is a very funny story. We had a lot of family and friends from, the Filipino community in New Jersey. And this is in 2004. They were very excited to meet Bill Kristol and Fred Barnes. And there's a photo of all of them with Bill and Fred, who were very gracious. And myself and my, bride tucked in the back. Nobody really wanted to take a picture with us.
Of course not. But Vic, I'd take a picture with you. I just want to tell people that Vic is the co-host of Getting Hammered, and I almost canceled him this week because he slandered my favorite cookie.
Which? Oh, the Oreo?
No, Hydrox.
Oh, come on! You got to be.
I
kidding
do.
me.
It's not my favorite cookie, but you can't say Do-si-dos because Do-si-dos only come out once a year, and I've already eaten all my Do-si-dos. So, but then Hydrox, people just say bad things about Hydrox Hydrox were perfectly great cookies.
Hydrox sounds like a villain from a James Bond movie. I work for the Hydrox Corporation, but of course, every company has to have their answer to the Oreo, which of course is one. It's there's only one Oreo. And it was
No, there are
created
55 Oreos. That's the problem. There's only one Hydrox. There are now 55 Oreos.
Yes. Okay. Fine. Point well taken. A creation of the National Biscuit Company. Yes.
I still like Hydrox. Let's get to the important stuff. How many times have you watched an hour and 40 minutes of anything in the last few years on TV?
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. And, there are actually not a lot of movies out there that are only an hour 40, and I would take it. That was not a surprise, I guess. We knew he was going to go long, as they say. And an hour 40, he beats the record. And it's not a State of the Union address either. It's just a joint address to Congress. Can you imagine, as I said, on Getting Hammered, what the first 100 days speech is going to be like?
But don't you feel bad for the justices? They can't laugh. They're not allowed to laugh. They're not even allowed to clap for the kid with cancer. The Democrats can be churlish and not, but they're not allowed to do anything. They're there independent of everything. They just have to sit, but they can't laugh.
Yeah. I think that that's kind of a challenge. But at the same time, Hugh, I'm sure that it's much appreciated that they're not being berated by the President of the United States about a Citizens United Supreme Court decision and having people like Dick Durbin standing behind them and yelling and jeering at them. And then Supreme Court Justice Alito mouths, the words, I believe it's "you're wrong" or something
You're
to
wrong.
that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about
and then
Citizens United and Obama. What a surprise. Actually was wrong. The president might have been on Harvard Law Review, but he didn't read the case. Vic, I want to make sure I get to one thing because you and Mary Catherine brought it up. I'm finally glad. So many people go out of their way to tell me that Elon Musk is not smart. And I say to myself, they say, oh, he hires good people. That's like saying I hired Dwayne so I do a good radio show. Dwayne's a great producer, but I mean, it's stupid to think Elon Musk is other than a genius. The guy is a genius.
Yeah. They want so badly for him not to be who he is. And in many ways, I always think of him as, the Howard Hughes of our time, and remember, and Hughes started with drill bits. And then he expanded into Hollywood and politics and you name it, and TWA. And this is Elon Musk. He came from South Africa. And contrary to Joy Behar and The View, it wasn't because he had very strong pro-apartheid views. And then he, helped build PayPal. He co-founded PayPal. And then after that, Tesla, and then SpaceX. And then moving on to, Doge and trying to cut billions, if not trillions, in government waste. And it's something that he wants to and feels very strongly about. He's a smart guy. And they want so badly for that not to be the case. And they're going to try to look away from the rocket that, the reusable rocket that NASA has tried so hard to do and has been unable to do. And it returns to the launch pad.
And these are the same people who believe global warming is going to destroy our lives. And so he comes along, he builds Tesla, which is an electric car. Some people actually, I don't own one, nor will I ever own one. I'm quite certain I couldn't make it work, right? It's a couple of generations behind me. I want Fred Flintstone's car. Nevertheless, the guy doesn't make stuff up that people don't want.
No, that's right. And they're trying to lead this Tesla boycott, and it must drive folks like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez crazy because, of course, we at the Free Beacon have spotted her Tesla, parked in the wrong space in front of the Whole Foods in Washington, D.C. What are they going to do now? Because, of course, he was this hero because it's the electric car, and we want to have an electric vehicle mandate. And suddenly we're anti-Elon Musk, anti-Tesla, and protesters going so far as to destroy Teslas and Tesla charging stations.
Last night happened in Seattle, and they're going to get him killed if they don't watch out. Last quick question, since you brought it up. How big is the Filipino community in New Jersey?
Oh, it's huge. Okay, so it's not like Stockton, California, which there are a lot of Filipinos out in California. But, my father came over, as part of the medical profession, doctors who came over and nurses who came over. They came to New York, New Jersey, that area, and they flourished.
I did not know that. I watched Sopranos for every season. I never saw any Filipino Americans. Did you file some kind of a lawsuit?
Yeah, I'm working on that one. They need to amend that.
Victorino Mattis on X. Go and listen to Getting Hammered. You'll laugh every single episode, and you'll learn stuff at Getting Hammered. I'm playing this for a reason. Until 2020, the only summers I could remember were back-to-back. 1967, Summer of Love. I'm like 10 years old. All I want to do is go to San Francisco. It looks like it's fun. 1968, The Summer of Hate. Of course, Dr. King was murdered. Bobby Kennedy Jr. was murdered. The Democrats blew up in San Diego, in Chicago. Cities blew up across the United States. It was a violent, terrible summer. I don't think anything compares until 2020. COVID was bad enough, and then George Floyd was murdered, and the country blew up. And they also lost their mind. That was when the public health people lost all credibility because you couldn't go outside and be with people at all in the summer of COVID unless you wanted to go to a demonstration of 1 million people on behalf of Black Lives Matter. The city of the District of Columbia, of Washington, D.C., took their COVID federal aid money, and they took $4.8 million of it, and they made the Black Lives Matter Plaza in front of the White House, in front of the Hay Adams, across from St. John's. And it was a political statement, not viewpoint neutral, in my view, completely unconstitutional. But they did it. They blew $4.8 million, and they're taking it down today. And head over to freebeacon.com for live coverage. $4.8 million. I just got done talking to you about food for the poor. You know what $4.8 million would do in El Salvador for kids? Instead of painting idiot signs and posters. The amount of money we blow on stupid stuff when we could feed people, I really makes me crazy. I was off last week, back east, visiting my grandkids who had serially gotten sick. So, of course, Tag You're It came to me. So I spent Saturday and Sunday prone, got up today. It's now moved into the laryngitis phase, which is phase 3. I do this twice a year, and I'll try and make it through the week. We'll see. We'll see. But I did want to come in and begin by saying thanks to Dwayne, who covered Monday and Friday for me. Kurt Schlichter was in on Tuesday. Ed Morrissey was here on Thursday. Mark Davis was here on Wednesday. The show was not canceled. So apparently you didn't do anything too badly. You didn't get the FCC on our case. But
no, that was Tuesday. We had to skirt that.
Yeah, well, that was Kurt.
Yeah.
How'd Kurt do? On his best behavior?
He kept us compliant.
Thank you. FCC compliant Kurt is not what we are used to, but he usually will play the game for us. I want to play for you Donald Trump this morning, talking to Maria Bartiromo about the first 6 weeks. Cut number 1.
We've had a great almost 6 weeks now, and I hope we can continue to go like that. We're at a very rapid pace. We have to make up for a lot of lost time. And the country was very poorly run for 4 years. You know better than anybody. Nobody covered it better than you, frankly. it's an honor to be with so many great people. We have really great people working with us.
You said America is back, momentum is back, our pride and spirit are back, and we're just getting started.
Right.
What do you specifically want America to look like in 4 years when you're done?
Well, I want a dynamic country where the private enterprise carries the day, not the government. And I want a strong country militarily. We need that nowadays. You can see that probably better than ever before. So I rebuilt our military. A lot of it was given away to Afghanistan, but it was a lot, but a very small portion, in all fairness. But when you think about the billions and billions of dollars that was just handed over, but I rebuilt it. We're going to be rebuilding it again because we need that. We always need that. But we're doing a series of incentives, tax incentives and other things. The tax bill, I think, is going to be very important. The Democrats will fight us all the way. One thing I learned the other night, again, I could say, because it's my fifth such speech. And at the beginning, I said, I didn't know it was going to be as pertinent as it turned out to be, that no matter what I do, this group of people in front of us, I could come up with the cure to the worst disease that the world has ever seen. I gave other examples. I said, no matter what I do, they're going to sit there angry, insolent. You just see it. I mean, you see it, you can feel it. No matter what I say, no matter what I do, no matter who it is, they won't stand, they won't applaud, they won't clap. They'll just sit there with sour faces. And that's what they did. And, you know, it was interesting. I said, I wonder if I should put this in, but it worked out to be true. And I think by putting it in, I showed that it was true. And it's sad because we're doing great things in this country. This country.
There's something wrong with the Democrats. And Donald Trump knows it. Cut number 3.
There's something wrong with them. It's just something. I can't even believe it. They lost an election in a landslide. They were talking about men playing in women's sports. When I looked the other night, I made a speech. The Republicans were going wild, and the Democrats were having their little signs up, their little signs, their little tiny signs. And I said, it's unbelievable. They don't get it. They don't get it now. And I think they're going to end up being a minor party if they keep going like this, because people don't want to hear about these stupid ideas that they have. Transgender for everybody. And again, the men and women's sports, what is that, a 90-10 deal? I don't even know who the 10 would be. But they're fighting for it. And I try and say to myself, because you always like to understand where your opponent is, whether it's in business or anything else, is there something I don't understand? But we don't understand it. You look at their theories on tax. You know, all my life I've watched politics. I've always liked it. I've watched it. I participated, but from the standpoint of a donor. But I participated. And all my life I've watched politicians, we will cut your taxes. We will cut your taxes. These people say we're going to raise your taxes. This is the only time. It's never said. I've never heard it. They say it even if they don't mean it. We will cut your taxes. These people say that we're going to give you the biggest tax increase you've ever had. And that's what they're running on.
Genuinely.
And I tell Republicans.
You can tell. I love to play his clips because he's genuinely dumbfounded at how dumb they are. And he doesn't understand ideology is not a thinking person's game. Ideology is a reflex. And they are ideologically, reflexively left-wing. And Colombia is actually surprised today that they lost $400 million. And students are having their student visas pulled or their green cards annulled, are surprised. We got laws on the books here. You can't help out designated terrorist organizations. Hamas is one, Hezbollah is another. You can't support them. It's illegal in the United States. We will revoke your green card. And they're surprised. I just wonder, what did they expect? Did they expect the federal taxpayer to keep giving Colombia $400 million when it's not safe to be Jewish on the campus? Are they out of their mind? I'll ask Bethany Mandel about that after the break. One more cut. What did Joe Biden leave Donald Trump? Donald Trump told us this morning, cut number 9.
Well, it may not survive anyway, but, you know, we have some weaknesses with Russia. You know, it takes two. Look, it was not going to happen, that war, and it happened. So now we're stuck with this mess. Think of what he stuck me with. Open borders where we have 21 million people came into our country, many of whom should not be here. Many are criminals. Many are criminals. Many murderers, drug dealers, drug lords. We got that. We have the whole mess with Israel on October 7th. We have all of the ramifications from the worst and dumbest withdrawal in history.
Both Ukraine and Israel were both attacked by aggressors. Is America treating both countries similarly? Are they treating the aggressors similarly?
I think so. Look, they're
Are
very
you favoring one over the other?
They're very different places, okay? Very, very different. You're talking about different levels of power. You're talking about different parts of the world. The Middle East has been under attack forever. It's been, you look, when wasn't it under attack? And then we came along and did the Abraham Accords, which was unheard of.
Have you been as tough on Russia as you've been on Hamas? I mean, what do you want to say to
Well,
critics?
I've been much tougher because I haven't done to Hamas. That's been Israel that has to do to Hamas. But Israel does tell me what's going on. I think I've been very tough to Russia. Tougher than anybody's ever been to Russia, if you think about it. First of all, we had the Russia hoax, which was a very bad thing, could have led to a war. And that was started by Schiff and all these lowlifes.
I know.
They're total lowlifes. And it was a fake deal, the 51 intelligence agencies. It was, I took all their passes away. They can't participate anymore. These guys know it came from Hunter Biden's laptop from hell, which came from his bathroom and or his bedroom, okay? Not a pretty sight. But this was a Hunter Biden thing. They said it was from Russia. No, I've been very tough. Remember this, I'm the one that stopped the Russian pipeline, Nord Stream 2. I stopped it. Biden came in and he approved it. I'm the one that put sanctions on Russia. I'm the one that gave the javelins against Russia. No, I've been very tough, but I got along well with Putin. And because I got along well, they say, he's so... Nobody's ever been... Putin would be the first to say it. Nobody's been tougher than Trump. And Biden hasn't been tough. Biden's done nothing. He was a weak, pathetic man.
Okay. It's a wonderful interview. Go and watch the whole thing. He's comfortable. He's moving fast. He's not going to slow down. And the most important thing is that the government remain open. All right. The continuing resolution unveiled over the weekend by Speaker Mike Johnson is a 6-month, let's keep the government going, keep DOJ going, keep the deportations going, keep the Department of Education and Civil Rights investigations going. Just go, 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 go. And that requires that every Republican, minus Tom Massey, who's just a moron. I don't know what to say. I'm sure he's a very smart moron, but he's a moron. He does not understand the government. And I don't understand the Kentucky district that votes for him. But he said he's not going to vote for the CR. So that means every other Republican's got to. And then it's going to go to the Senate. If Senate Democrats want to shut down the government, good. Let them show you what they really believe. But in the meantime, call your congressman. There's one of them. Call your 2 senators. Tell them all, keep the government open. Pass the CR. And if you're in Congressman Massey's district, no hope for you. You're doomed. Bethany Mandel joins me. Bethany, you have a lot of children. How are you ever not sick? I spent 1 week with my grandchildren. I've been sick for 4 days and I've lost my voice.
It's funny because I was actually going to write a post for the Mom Wars tonight about this crazy trick that I discovered over COVID. Brace yourself for it. I wash my hands all the time.
Oh, well, I didn't do that. I got to tell you, though, I can't go near the plague ship that is my daughter's house and not come away sick. And so I'm getting the prednisone tonight so I can carry on. But let's go to important stuff. I keep a list of things with which I'm disappointed with Donald Trump so that people who accuse me of always liking things Trump will know. You know what I'm disappointed about today? He only found one green card holder to kick out of the country of Colombia. How hard can it be, Bethany? There got to be 20 of them.
Yeah. I mean, truth be told, I'm a little bit shaky on that one. I think that they needed to charge him first before taking him into custody. I don't know, man. I'm a little uncomfortable with, detentioning people who are here on a green card. But I mean, the fact that it was up to Homeland Security to do this is just another indictment of Columbia University. The fact that they weren't expelling these people. He took over 2 campus buildings. I mean, it's not like there's an absence of things to charge him with. He took over 2 campus buildings. He was handing out Hamas literature. He's obviously a national security threat. Why did they take
Stop
Homeland
right there.
Security
What you
out of
just said,
it?
handing out Hamas literature, is in fact a felony. You're not allowed to support terrorist groups so designated by the United States Treasury, and that includes Hamas and Hezbollah. He is a supporter of Hamas. That loses your green card. I'm not losing sleep over his due process rights. I'm not.
I mean, I'm not either. I think that they did this in reverse order. I think they should have charged him first before taking him into custody. That's
so. Let me. I very rarely disagree with I very rarely disagree with the commentary guys, but this morning they were upset that they thought it was a little reckless. I think it's over communicating, like they did on the border. They're over communicating to everyone who's been involved in this mayhem for the last 16 months. We're coming for you all. Maybe you should run away. I think that's what they're doing.
I mean, the administration was not unclear. The fact that, they were surprised at Columbia that this happened is inexplicable to me, because they have been signaling the whole time that if you continue to participate in this anti-American, Western values cause of Hamas, there will be consequences. There needs to be more consequences.
So, Bethany, the other question that came up, and I've only listened to half a commentary because I've got to listen to the other half on the way home.
More than me.
Okay, so what they said is, well, I don't know how Title VI applies. Title VI makes it illegal to discriminate on the basis of race and ethnicity. Is a Jew a race or I think they're both. It's like getting double bingo. It's both a race and an ethnicity, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think that is clear to me. I've spoken to so many lawyers on this who have filed lawsuits on this basis. That I think that is, they're standing on solid ground there.
All right, so now let's go to the money. I don't want them to give the $400 million back under any way, circumstance. I want them to shut down entire departments. I think Trump doesn't have a lot of time to fix higher education. It's like a lifetime effort, but he can help by shutting down a lot of this nonsense.
Yeah, no, I mean, and also cutting down the flow of Qatari money into universities also will make a really big dent. That I think needs to be number one, and cutting down Qatari influence, in our media as well. Tucker Carlson sat down with the Qatari foreign minister a couple days ago. We need to also, be honest with everyone about who is in on the take when it comes to Qatar, because it's a lot of folks. It's universities. The list is very long.
Bethany, I've sat down with the UAE ambassador and heard at great length the explanation that the reason that Hamas is in Qatar is because Israel wants them there.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe that. I mean, I don't know if we have any truth tellers on that front. And I say that about the Israelis too. I don't know who to believe on that front. And I think that there is a truth somewhere, probably a little bit in the middle, but my instinct is to trust the Israelis over the genocidal, homicidal maniacs.
All right, so let me go to the Israelis and the Druze in Syria. I asked Dr. Oren this. He was a diplomat. He didn't really tell me. What's your expectation of Israel's protection for the Druze in Syria?
So, I mean, I think that it's unwise for them to get too involved because they have enough of their own problems in Israel. They still have 59 hostages to get back. That being said, I mean, there is a significant Druze community, especially in the north, and they feel an affinity and an obligation to that community. And hopefully they will extend as much support to those folks as they can.
That's my view. My view is that the Druze is to Israel as the West is to Israel. And we owe minorities within our ability to protect a lot of protection. Yep. What did you make of the B-52 up in the air with the F-35 and the F-15 from Israel last week?
I mean, I think if they're going to take action, they need to actually take action. A show of strength is fine, I guess, but it seemed to me without anything behind it, it looks like an air show.
Okay, to me, it doesn't look like an air show. To me, it looks like Trump saying, I sent you a letter, Khamenei, I mean it. You can open the doors and take out the stuff, and we can do it the easy way or we can do it the hard way. By the way, here's my B-52 being escorted by a couple of stealth jets that you can't stop. I mean, it just seems to me it's a either-or situation, and I don't think people are going to screw around with. The new Donald Trump is not for screwing around with. Do you get that belief?
No, I don't. He is, what is it? FAFO?
Yes, but we say fool around and find out here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Fool around and find out.
There you go. Well, I was just saying the letter, actually. But,
I know. I'm making it clear to the FCC commissioners who might be listening. Fool around and find out.
Yeah. Fool around. There we go. So, I mean, I wish that they had a little bit more of the FO in there. I would have liked more find out at that funeral. But, hopefully there will be other opportunities to make that clear.
All right. Now, Bethany, for me, I think there are innocent people in Gaza. I think there were probably innocent people at the Hezbollah funeral. What is your position on innocent people in Gaza? Because they can't all be bad. Can they?
I mean, the testimony that we're hearing from all the returned hostages says that they never once in their entire time in captivity, including when they encountered children, met someone who was sympathetic to them and who offered them kindness or food or water. Even the female returned hostages said that they were beaten and abused by children and teenagers and women. I guess in theory, perhaps there are innocent civilians there.
Remember Abraham walking towards Sodom and Gomorrah? If I can find 10, will you spare the city?
Yes.
That's how I feel. Yeah, okay. So that's how I feel. I think we can find 10. But I'm not going to turn on the electricity or the food. Are you in favor of Israel's taking 100%. These positions?
Yeah, they needed to do that on October 8th. And I don't blame them for not doing so. They didn't have the backup from the White House, but now they do.
Now they do. Bethany, good to talk to you. Don't worry about the green cards. If they're wrong, they'll get to stay. And if I'm right and Andy McCarthy's right, they got to go. Bethany Mandel, follow her on Twitter and wash your hands. Bethany Shondark on X. I'm Hugh Hewitt with laryngitis, but thank goodness Akash Chogali, Vice President, American for Prosperity, is with me. Akash, do the heavy lifting, buddy. Talk to us about the CR and the tax bill.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, no one loves continuing resolutions. We all wish Congress would follow the budget process that has been laid out by federal law, which they have not successfully done in almost 3 decades now. But I think the CR is making the best of a bad situation again. It allows them to clear the decks. It doesn't increase spending, and it allows us to get to September focused on the tax bill. Now, where the tax bill stands, Speaker Mike Johnson obviously had a huge victory getting that budget resolution through the House, but all that does is start the process. Now comes the hard part of actually writing the reconciliation bill, getting on the same page as the Senate. Senate Republicans have not moved, of course, the House budget resolution. They're still focused on their approach. And so a lot of questions yet to be decided. But again, as we've discussed before, Hugh, the urgency is simply in getting it done to extend current rates. If this tax bill is allowed to expire, it would be the biggest tax increase in the history of our country. Republicans in both chambers and in the White House know we simply cannot allow that to happen.
Now, Akash, you and AFP have been sponsors of mine for a long time. You've never not known the answer to something, but I have a very difficult question. By passing the CR, do the Republicans give up one of the 2 reconciliation opportunities that they have?
They do not. So
okay.
The continuing resolution is simply that. It just continues government funding at current levels. It can be passed with a simple majority in the House. Now, as you'll recall, as your viewers will know, Hugh, typically it's a bipartisan vote. There are some Republicans that refuse to vote for these because it is an example of the broken budget process, and they're right in thinking that. But this time around, even a lot of those conservatives, almost all of them basically, are coming around to voting for the CR to clear the decks. It's the Democrats who, in this situation, House Democrats have pledged to oppose this. They're functionally voting for a government shutdown, are the Democrats, because they're, of course, opposing the spending cuts and cleaning up the waste and fraud in government that DOJ is doing. However, it still needs 60 votes to pass through the Senate. So you do need a handful of Democrats over there to vote for the CR to keep the government open. So no, it does not use up one of their opportunities.
So So explain to me why the Senate wouldn't just go along with stamp, pass, and mark done, and then they get to go first on the second one. Why don't they do it that way?
As far as the reconciliation bill, well, look,
Yes.
the Senate has taken a different approach. So the House Republican calculus, which I think is frankly accurate, is that given the moderates, the ideological diversity in that conference, they don't know if they're going to be able to pass two reconciliation bills, right? You've got the SALT caucus, the conservatives, the deficit hawks, what have you. And so I think Speaker Johnson is making an accurate assessment that he has one bite at the apple. The Senate, on the other hand, wants to get President Trump an early win on the issues where they all agree, which are border security and energy. But again, that's a risky gambit for them to use that strategy as far as how it would play out in the House. And so it's just a very different dynamic. And we're just hopeful that they get on the same page soon, because as we've discussed,
Do you have any insight into what the Senate doesn't like about the House bill? Because if I can understand that, I can understand balking, but I think they get the border and the defense buildup that they want in the House bill, don't they?
I think there are probably two issues. One is they simply know there's just a lot more agreement on border and energy policy, and so they know they can pass that very quickly. Of course, the House is on board with that as well. When it comes to tax policy, the Senate rightfully wants to make the Trump tax cuts permanent. They're unsure if the House budget resolution allows them to do so. So I think there's a question on a couple different ends here. But ultimately, look, we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And if, in fact, it's the case that the House resolution creates, the vehicle that is the only thing that can pass through both chambers and get the president's signature to extend the Trump tax cuts, and that's what it's going to have to be. But I think that's something they're going to have to figure out in very short order here, because, Hugh, the longer they wait to pass this bill, the less the American people are going to see the benefits in time for the midterm election. So there is an urgency here, both economically and politically, for Republicans to deliver on taxes specifically.
Last question, Akash. I don't pay attention to markets going up and down 4%. I don't care. I'm an investor. I stay invested. Do you think that's going to spook Republicans at all?
I don't know. It's obviously disheartening to see the market and what it's done. Again, tariffs can be very harmful when they're broad-based, and the uncertainty is harmful to the markets. But I think what this should do is just, again, create more urgency to get the tax bill done for Republicans. There are a number of things congressional Republicans cannot control. Chief among them is what the president of the executive branch decides to do, other factors that impact the market. The number one thing they can control for the pocketbooks of the American people is extending the Trump tax cuts. I think the urgency has already been there, and the market volatility should only increase it.
Akash, always good to talk to you. Visit Americans for Prosperity. And once again, he knew the answer to, I've never stumped him. Stump Akash is a game I've never won. Thank you, Akash. Joined by Admiral Mark Montgomery, retired United States Navy. Admiral, welcome back from your duties of senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. I'm coming at you with a curve from left field. I forgot to write you a note about this. I've been listening to a book by Andrew Roberts called Masters and Commanders, which I was unaware that he'd written. And it's a lot about Sir Alan Robbins being a strategist, as he likes to say, and not thinking that George Marshall was. And Alan Roberts is a pretty impressive man in my view. Have you read that book? Are you familiar with him?
I'm familiar with the book, yes.
Okay. So who is our strategist on China? Who is actually sitting around thinking about how to deter China from doing stupid things?
I think in the absence of anyone else, it's probably Admiral Sam Paparo at U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. The problem, of course, is he's also our operationalist, thinking about how you actually defeat China if you're forced to fight them. And it is not a good strategy to have your strategist be your lead warfighter, because those are conflicting responsibilities. And so the real answer to your question is we don't have someone in that role, and we haven't for quite some time.
So where would that person be? Would they be at the White House? Would it be Bridge Colby if he goes to be undersecretary, as I hope? Would it be Mike Waltz, who's also operational? I really don't know where we would have one stored.
So in theory, there's a few places it could be. One could be, if our chairman, the Joint Chiefs, stood back from the kind of day-to-day operational role that they have inserted themselves into over the years. In theory, it could be there. We had a civilian, Andy Marshall, who thought deep thoughts, but I'm not sure. He was a strategist. Sorry about the language. He was our chief strategist in the most esoteric sense of the word, not kind of in the tell me how we confront China broadly, which is, I think, what you're getting at. And so probably, I mean, the chairman is one position could be the Bridge Colby, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. Again, he will be sucked into, what do we do about Iran? What do we do about Somalia? What do we do about Kosovo? Very quickly. So I don't think that job can do it either. We're not aligned for that. But honestly, if the chairman were doing the job, kind of as construed in the Goldwater-Nichols law, there might be a role for him or her in that.
Okay, off the top of your head, I know you're just back from Taiwan again, and we had China circling Australia with its war game. Let me play for you, by the way. President Trump this morning on Air Force One talking about China playing games with Australia, cut number 21.
China and Iran are doing military exercises together. Does that concern you?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Why not?
Because we're stronger than all of them. We have more power than all of them. I rebuilt the military. Unfortunately, Biden did nothing with it, but I rebuilt the military. But we don't want to even talk about that. I think if you look at what's happening and if you see what we've done and if you see where we've come, and let's see what happens with the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. I think you're going to have eventually, and maybe not in the distant future, you can have some.
So what is he saying there, Admiral, about China and Iran running their war games and China circling, and he's not concerned about it? What's he trying to communicate to them?
So first, two things are going on. One, China, Russia, and Iran are actually doing multilateral exercises in the Arabian Gulf area. And he's right to say, look, that, it bothers me that the Axis authoritarians are getting together. China and Russia are starting to do more complex exercises. But when you include the Iranians, it quickly goes down to the lowest common denominator. So that exercise in and of itself doesn't bother me. Separately, China is circumventing Australia with a cruiser, a frigate, and a replenishment ship, and kind of a show of force and a demonstration of we're a big country, you're a small or medium-sized country in Australia. I don't think Australia buys it. They're doing it for the second time in a row around a federal election in Australia. Again, I don't think that affects the Australian voter in a way that the Chairman Xi might want. But it is a demonstration of power. Now, to get at his third point, which is we are the preeminent naval power in the world, but more than that, we're the preeminent joint power. Because if I'm going to sink a Chinese Navy, I'm not going to do it with Navy ships necessarily. I could do it with Air Force bombers just as efficiently, and maybe even with land-based missiles from the Army or Marine Corps. So there are a lot of options for us. He's correct to say we're still there. And one last point, he did rebuild our military. Our military dropped to 3% spending on GDP under President Obama. He raised it up to about 3.4%. It's come back down to 3%. Unfortunately, he now needs to build it back up about 0.1% a year. And I think that's what Chairman Wicker, Senator Wicker of the Senate Armed Services Committee is intending to do.
Now, from the strategist point of view, is it a good thing or a bad thing for Taiwan Semiconductor to build a lot of their chips here in the United States?
This was fantastic, Hugh. Look, Taiwan's president can't come to America because of the restrictions we have. Their vice president can't come. The minister of defense can't come. The minister of foreign affairs can't come. The TSMC leader was effectively the manifestation of Taiwan's leader to meet with the president. I loved it. Look, it's like the prime minister of Japan when he came and promised, several hundred billion. They added up to $1 trillion total, but really several hundred billion worth of increased Japanese investments and potentially a solution to the Nippon Steel, U.S. Steel investment issue. But the TSMC chair coming and giving this $100 billion increased investment on top of their already existing $65 billion investment over the next 4 years in a number of sites around the country, at least 5 different facilities. This was Taiwan saying, we're in it with you. We are your economic partner of choice. We are critical to your economy. You are critical to our economy. We are bound to each other in a way that I just can't tell you how impressed I was with Taiwan for doing this and with TSMC for taking the lead.
All right, now, Admiral, last question. We may go into the break on this. Does China have smart strategists, to borrow again from Field Marshal Brooke, we call strategists? Do they have good ones? Because they're moving a lot of people around sort of randomly and quickly.
So I think they did after the third Taiwan Straits crisis back in 1994-95, when we put 2 carriers around Taiwan and basically made them back down. They had a strategic insight of a great proportion in the sense that they said, we're going to take the next 25 years and build a military that doesn't let this happen again and drive the United States Navy and Air Force from outside the first island chain. That was a strategic moment, and then they spent 25 years operationally executing it.
How do we counter that? And what's the strategic insight or breakthrough that we need to actually operationalize over 25 years? I think I know the answer from Tom Cotton's book, 7 Things You Can't Say About China. Admiral, what is the strategic insight the United States has to grasp and then operationalize to match what the Chinese have done for the last 25 years?
So I think the most important thing we have to do, Hugh, is we have to make it so that Taiwan and the United States, our forces together are 2 + 2 = 5. In other words, the sum of our parts is greater than the individual value. And that is going to be hard because right now, the sum of our parts is 2 + 2 = 3. We are two deconflicted militaries not ready to operate together. The greatest look, we need to continue investments in our military. I think Sam Paparo's got that figured out. I think with the right budget levels, Senator Wicker and Chairman Rogers in the House will make sure that happens to support the president. And Taiwan needs to make investments, and they are geared in. They told me point blank, we are all in on 3% in GDP, and they'll go higher. We can talk some other time about why 10% is not realistic because we can't sell them those weapons. But the thing we can change, and change with minimal cost but amazing return, is a strategic commitment to aligning our militaries, exercising together, planning together, naval exercises, air exercises, then joint exercises, air exercises with ground exercises, then joint exercises. If we can do that, we can make 2 + 2 = 5. And the one country that's going to know it more than any other is China. And the CCP will be deterred if they see that 2 + 2 = 5 when the Taiwan and the United States get together to fight.
How hard is that to make happen, Admiral?
So when I was in the Senate working with Senator McCain, we would say every year, do these exercises, do that, do that. You should do this, you should do that. And the Department of Defense blew us off because it was never an order. Then with the Taiwan Enhanced Resilience Act, for which Senator Cotton deserves a lot of credit, as does Senator Menendez and others, I wrote sections of it that explicitly said, you must exercise with them. You must do joint exercises, service exercises, joint exercises. You must plan with them. You must provide FMF. You must provide Presidential Drawdown Authority. You must prioritize them in sales so when they want to buy things, they get near the top of the list. All those musts from Congress were passed in the Taiwan Enhanced Resilience Act and the fiscal year 2023 National Defense Authorization Act. Since then, we've seen some efforts by Sam Paparo at Indo-PACOM to start to operationalize that. Congress needs to lean into the Department of Defense. Tell President Trump's team, you have to operationalize this.
Well said. Admiral Montgomery, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for returning. Come back next week or soon thereafter. Thank you, Admiral. I just got a dose of reality from Admiral Montgomery. I don't have enough time to play it. I'll put it over on my YouTube channel. We'll post it at HughHewitt.com, the entire interview. You want to listen to that about how do we operationalize that strategic partnership between Taiwan and China and Taiwan and the United States in order to deter China from their continued aggression in the South China Sea and against Taiwan and Australia. It's important. Go and sign up at YouTube, like and subscribe. Make sure you don't miss it. We'll post it up there within the hour. Let me remind you, food for the poor. $100 takes care of one kid. We'll post it up there within the hour. Let me remind you, food for the poor. $100 takes care of one kid for an entire year. $100. I was earlier kidding Chris DeGaulle. God bless Chris. He's raising money, handfuls of money. I mean, just great energy. Good for you, Chris, because we love Food for the Poor, and we've loved Food for the Poor for decades here. They've been doing this, and we're focused on El Salvador this year because El Salvador is really doing everything right. Our new president has taken the gangs and gotten them under control. He's gotten the churches back involved. He's helping Food for the Poor. He's helping stop the migration caravans moving through his country. We want to help him. More than anything, we want to help those children get something to eat. Food for the Poor can take $100 and turn that into a meal a day at lunch for a school kid for an entire year. And it's not fancy. You don't have to invent a 501c3. You don't have to go on a mission trip. Just send the money. You can text my name, Hewitt, H-E-W-I-T-T, to 51555, Hewitt, H-E-W-I-T-T, to 51555, or go to the banner, Feed Their Future, at the top of HughHewitt.com. Let me close by saying I hope I'm back tomorrow. Prednisone works pretty quick. I think this will get better before it gets worse.